Imagine a land fragmented for centuries, then astonishingly reunited and utterly transformed. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into an incredible chapter of Chinese history. We're looking at the foundational Sui Dynasty and the illustrious early years of the Tang.
And our mission really is to uncover the pivotal innovations that reshaped China. We're talking massive infrastructure like the Grand Canal, revolutionary education systems.
Wow.
We'll explore how these empires blossomed into these vibrant centers of culture, global influence too. They really laid down the deep roots of East Asian identity as we know it.
Absolutely. Our insights for this journey, they come from a detailed historical account, offering a really comprehensive look at this transformative era.
Yes.
So let's begin. Let's explore the powerful unification and bold, maybe sometimes brutal beginnings of the Sui Dynasty.
Okay. So for almost 3 centuries after the collapse of the mighty Han Dynasty, China had endured fragmentation. It was a period often just called disorder. It must have felt like, true national unity was just an impossible dream for generations.
I can imagine. And from that prolonged disarray, a really key figure started to emerge.
Mac.
Yang Jin. He'd go on to establish the Sui Dynasty as Emperor Wen.
Right.
He rose from the militaristic northern Zhou state. Now, this was a man of contrasts, wasn't he? A Sinicized northern aristocrat, so fully adopted Chinese culture, but still had those robust northern skills like horsemanship, archery. How did that background set up?
His background, it really gave him a unique advantage.
Right.
He was perfectly placed, to bridge those cultural, political divides, north and south. And he proved his military might pretty early on, crushing northern Qi in 577 CE.
Okay.
That effectively made him the dominant power in northern China.
And then, 581 CE, he made his move, became regent for his young grandson, the emperor, and swiftly deposed him.
Yeah, pretty ruthless.
And proclaimed the new Sui Dynasty, named after his old fiefdom.
Uh-huh.
But this wasn't just, a naked power grab. He immediately sought to legitimize his rule.
Exactly. He deliberately signaled a return to the established, correctly organized bureaucratic empire model of the Han, moving away from those more, let's say, archaic styles that had kind of taken hold.
He wasn't just signaling it, though. He physically built it. The old capital, Cheng'an, was in ruins, right?
Oh.
But this new city, Daxing City, rose nearby in 582 CE. What did the sheer scale of Daxing tell people?
Oh, it was a massive statement, built on an absolutely unprecedented scale, designed to project this image of grand imperial ambition.
Yeah.
Every aspect of Daxing City just screamed stability, power, a meticulously organized empire. And his reforms, they went way beyond architecture. He simplified, softened the penal system, taxes too, really aimed to bring stability back, encourage peasants to return to their lands.
And there was a significant shift in religious policy, particularly with Buddhism.
Yeah.
The northern Zhou before him had persecuted Buddhists.
Exactly right. Yang Jian, who was a deeply devout Buddhist himself, completely reversed that policy.
Oh.
He declared Buddhism the state religion of the new Sui Empire. This was, profound. Not just for religious freedom, but it strategically leveraged a really widespread belief system to unite a fractured population under his new rule. It was, frankly, a masterstroke of statecraft.
So all these foundations, they laid the groundwork for what became the Grand Unification, the Sui rapidly consolidated power. First, significant victories against the Turkic Khaganate in 583 CE. That weakened them, caused a split.
Yes, and they swiftly followed that by annexing the southern Chinese state of Western Liang in 587 CE. But the real climax, the moment China truly came back together, was the conquest of Chen in 589 CE.
Tell us about that. This wasn't just another military campaign, was it?
Oh, far from it. A massive 500,000-strong Sui army, led by Prince Yanguang, successfully invaded the last southern empire.
500,000.
Huge. The Emperor of Chen was captured, and after nearly 3 centuries of fragmentation, all of China was reunited under a single rule. And, this outcome actually surprised many at the time. People often expected unification to come from the South. They saw themselves as the sort of legitimate inheritors of Chinese tradition.
Right.
But it was the unified power of the Sui from the North that ultimately prevailed.
So the Sui achieved this momentous thing, unifying China. But despite that success, the dynasty itself was, remarkably short-lived.
Very short.
Prince Yanguang, the hero of the South, he ascends the throne in 604 CE. After his father's death. Now, there have been historical accusations of patricide against him, How seriously should we take those?
Well, the sources suggest those accusations are likely exaggerated.
Okay.
In that era, effective, untraceable poisons were extremely rare.
Yeah.
And common acute illnesses could easily look like poisoning.
Right.
Emperor Yang, unlike his more cautious, bureaucratic father, was a ruler of grand spectacle. He relentlessly pursued these monumental projects to highlight his reign's glory, often drew comparisons to figures like Qin Shi Huang.
The first emperor.
Exactly. And this historical archetype, the overreaching ruler, that might explain some of the negative press he got from later chroniclers.
And his projects were truly epic. The Grand Canal, built between 605 and 609 CE, just an astonishing engineering marvel.
Absolutely.
Linking the Yangtze and Yellow Rivers, spanning, 1,500 to 1,700 kilometers. This became China's main transport artery for centuries, right?
Wait.
Vital for moving grain from the south to the north until railways came along.
Pretty much until the 20th century, yeah. The scale of construction was staggering. Immense earthworks, complex engineering, lots of locks, and all completed in just 4 years.
4 years.
4 years. But this came at an immense human price.
I was going to ask.
8 million people were conscripted. For the canal, for building over 40 palace complexes, new roads, a vast fleet of ships.
8 million.
Yeah. Chroniclers, maybe playing into that Qin Shi Huang narrative again, recorded mortality rates as high as 40 to 50%.
40 to 50, that's horrifying.
It is. And he also ordered restoration work on sections of the Great Wall, which further cemented this image of a relentless, demanding builder.
That's an almost unimaginable human cost for one vision. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? As a ruler, how do you justify that kind of suffering for a long-term goal?
It speaks volumes about the absolute power of the emperor, I think. And a mindset focused on the long-term benefit of the empire, perhaps over individual lives on a vast scale. But amidst these huge, costly projects, Emperor Yang also introduced something quietly revolutionary: the imperial examination system, the Kiju, in 605 CE.
Ah, yes, the Kiju.
Now, it was just a tentative sprout of a system then, but it would endure for 13 centuries. Right up until 1905.
13 centuries. So how was this revolutionary compared to, how people usually got power back then?
It was revolutionary because it proclaimed, in principle at least, that top government posts would be awarded based on centralized state exams, not on who you knew or who your father was or, heredity.
Right, patronage or birth.
Exactly. And crucially, it theoretically declared no caste barriers. Anyone, in principle, could take the exam and aim for high office.
In principle. But in practice,
Mm-hmm.
how easy was it for, say, a farmer's son?
Well, not very, especially initially. Success demanded years, decades even, of intense study. 15 to 20 years mastering Confucian canons, ancient Chinese language, complex essay writing.
Wow.
So this made it prohibitively expensive. It was largely exclusive to wealthy families who could actually afford to support a son through all those years of study without him earning anything.
So despite those very real limitations, what was its fundamental impact? Why was it so important?
Its fundamental impact was profound. Just the declaration of social mobility, this theoretical path from commoner to prime minister based on merit that was unique globally. Absolutely foundational to China's whole bureaucratic system. Even if only a few people passed each year during the Sui, the precedent was set. A truly distinct innovation. It really set China apart from almost every other society at the time in terms of how it structured its government and the aspirations it offered its elite.
Fascinating. But unfortunately for Emperor Yang, his grand ambitions also extended to foreign policy, and not all went well there.
No. Early successes in Vietnam and against the Tuyuhun were pretty quickly overshadowed by 4 disastrous campaigns against the Korean state of Goguryeo. That was between 611 and 614 CE.
Disastrous how?
Well, despite deploying hundreds of thousands of troops, these campaigns were just plagued by logistical failures, massive losses. The sheer size of the armies often meant they couldn't supply themselves effectively.
Right. They became a danger to themselves almost.
Pretty much. More a threat to their own supply lines than to the Koreans sometimes, and this really damaged imperial prestige, drained vital resources.
This seems to be the tipping point. After these Korean failures, Emperor Yang apparently retreated into lavish entertainments, lost touch.
Yeah, seems that way. Widespread rebellions erupted in 617 CE, and it all culminated in his assassination by his own officers in 618 CE. And that was the swift end of the Sui Dynasty.
So short-lived.
But, from the ashes of the Sui, a new and far more enduring empire arose. The Tang.
And what a transition that was. So 618 CE, Yuan, a governor, He seizes Chang'an, proclaims the Tang Dynasty.
Yeah.
But the unification wasn't instant, right? It took another decade until 628 CE, battling other local leaders.
That's right.
But then his son, Li Shimin, soon to be Emperor Taizong, he really takes center stage. Tell us about his rise. It wasn't exactly smooth.
No, not at all. Li Shimin, who was a figure of immense capability, but also, frankly, ruthlessness, he orchestrated a very bloody palace coup in 626 CE, eliminated his elder brother, who was the heir apparent, and other relatives.
Wow.
His father then abdicated in his favor, and Li Shimin swiftly completed the unification. Now, later historians, they often contrasted the short, misguided Sui with the long, wise Tang.
Ah, the classic narrative.
Exactly, drawing parallels to the Qin and Han dynasties, emphasizing how the Tang, under Taizong, supposedly adopted the best of Sui's innovations while fixing its flaws. It was a very powerful narrative that framed his rule as the start of a new enlightened age.
And the Tang certainly did build on the Sui's groundwork, particularly with that imperial examination system. They put more money into provincial Confucian schools, right? Broadened access to education.
They did. Significantly increased funding, helping more people potentially access that path. But another innovation completely revolutionized how knowledge spread and was standardized. The printing revolution.
Right, woodblock printing.
Exactly. Xylography. Now, paper had been invented centuries earlier, making copying texts cheaper.
Traditionally, Kailun 105 CE.
Right. But true printing emerged in the Tang era, specifically 7th, 8th centuries CE.
And we have actual proof of this, don't we? An existing printed book.
We absolutely do. The oldest known printed book we have is the Diamond Sutra. It dates from 768 CE.
And it's a Buddhist text, interestingly.
Yes. It's fascinating. Buddhists were really early adopters of printing. Why? Because creating copies of sacred texts was seen as a way to accumulate good karma.
Ah, a religious incentive.
A powerful one. It provided strong reason to develop this quite complex technology.
So this allowed for mass production. How did xylography really change things across the empire?
Oh, it was transformative. It meant you could make hundreds, even thousands of copies relatively quickly. This dramatically reduced the cost of books, led to a proliferation of state and private printing houses.
So not just religious texts.
No. Standardized administrative documents, literary works, educational materials all could reach much wider audiences. And to really unify and preserve that core Confucian knowledge, in 837 CE, they created the Akkadian stone canons.
Done cannons?
Yeah, 114 massive stone slabs, carved with the 12 Confucian canons. These incredible slabs, they still exist today in Xi'an. They ensured a standardized curriculum across the entire empire, a real bedrock for scholars.
Incredible. And this era wasn't just about bureaucracy and technology. It was also the golden age of Tang poetry, a true high point for Chinese literature. Poets like Li Bai, Du Fu, Wang Wei still celebrated. What was different about their poetry?
Well, Tang poetry marked a really significant shift. It often took a more lyrical, more psychological turn, focused on personal experience, nature, the transient beauty of life.
Rather than just court affairs.
Exactly. It wasn't confined mostly to the imperial court. And this makes it feel surprisingly modern, very relatable, exploring universal themes in a way that resonated deeply then and still does today.
Now, the Tang's influence, it went far beyond its internal borders. It had this incredibly cosmopolitan reach. Militarily, they had big victories, didn't they?
Yes.
Against the Turkic Khaganates.
Yes, substantial victories. They defeated both the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates by 6557 CE. This really expanded Tang control along the Silk Road. They established the Protectorate of Anxi over much of what's now Xinjiang and parts of Central Asia.
Right.
Even northern Vietnam, known then as Annam, was brought under Tang control.
And their interactions with Korea were complex, too.
Very. The Tang allied with Silla to defeat Goguryeo and Baekje in 668 CE. Now, Silla eventually managed to expel the Tang from the Korean peninsula itself, but significant mainland territories that had belonged to Goguryeo remained part of China.
This period is often called the Pax Seneca. What does that really mean? How far did Tang influence stretch beyond just military power?
The Pax Seneca, it refers to this period of Chinese peace and cultural dominance, roughly mid-7th to mid-8th century. And Tang influence, it radiated far beyond its armies. Chinese culture, especially its writing system, was adopted by elites right across East Asia, Japan, Vietnam, Korea.
Wow.
Even the Tungusic state of ballet used a script incorporating Chinese characters. This widespread adoption of Chinese literary and administrative norms, it was so impactful it actually helped later scholars reconstruct the pronunciation of medieval Chinese.
Amazing.
It really speaks to the magnetic pull of Tang culture.
And this global reach seems perfectly embodied in the capital itself, Chagin.
Oh, absolutely. Chanhan was this meticulously planned metropolis, home to over 1 million people that made it the largest city in the world at the time.
1 million people.
Yeah. And it just buzzed with foreign traders, Arabs, Persians, Sogdians. They arrived via the overland Silk Road, but also the thriving maritime Silk Road. Guangzhou was a major port. It was a true melting pot.
What's fascinating is how open the Tang elite seemed to be to all these foreign influences.
Remarkably open. You know, the ruling Li family themselves had significant Turkic ancestry. That probably contributed to this openness.
Oh, okay.
And this led to this vibrant cultural fusion, adoption of foreign instruments, dances, cuisine, even Turkic titles for the emperor. The art from the time really shows this. Like the horse reliefs from Emperor Taizong's tomb, they show non-Chinese saddles, grooms dressed in steppe attire. It vividly illustrates this blend. It was just an unparalleled period of cultural exchange, cosmopolitanism. It really defined what it meant to be Tang.
And amidst all this dynamism, this openness, we find one of the most, well, singular figures in all of Chinese history, Empress Wu Zetian, China's only female emperor. Her rise was just unprecedented.
Indeed it was. Born into a merchant family, which was already unusual for the top elite. She started as a concubine of Emperor Taizong. Then, after his death, she became a Buddhist nun.
Right, which is often the fate of imperial concubines.
Exactly. But she captivated the next emperor, Gaozong, rose to become his empress in 655 CE.
And effectively, she started ruling long before she officially took the throne, didn't she? Gaozong was often sick.
Yes, he was sickly. So she held the reins of power for nearly 30 years. Then, in 690 CE, she made this astonishing move, deposed her own son, and ascended the throne herself, proclaimed a new Sui Dynasty.
Just incredible. And she was quite the innovator, too. Introduced new characters.
She loved innovation. Yes, she even introduced new characters into the Chinese script. But her masterstroke, really, for legitimacy, especially as a female ruler in a Confucian society that really denied women political authority, was her patronage of Buddhism.
How did that work?
Well, for instance, she promoted a specific sutra that claimed the future Buddha, Maitreya, could be female. This gave her a kind of divine justification for her rule.
Clever.
Very. And the colossal Buddha at the Longmen Grottos, some believe it was modeled on her full-faced beauty, that really exemplifies her patronage. She also dramatically increased the number of successful imperial exam candidates.
Ah, building loyalty.
Exactly, nurturing a new class of officials loyal primarily to her.
Now, traditional Confucian historians, obviously deeply uncomfortable with a female emperor, they often depicted her very negatively, right? Lots of alleged intrigues, poisonings, promiscuity.
Yeah.
How does modern history view her now?
Yeah, the traditional narratives are harsh, but when we look with a more detached, analytical eye, the picture really changes. Despite those Confucian portrayals, she was a highly effective ruler.
Yeah.
Yes. Her stable governance, her administrative reforms, they actually prepared the groundwork for the absolute peak of Tang power, which came in the early 8th century, just after her reign. Her rule was a period of significant stability and strength.
What's truly captivating about her legacy, though, is her tomb, shared with her husband. It famously features a stele without inscription, a blank monument right next to one inscribed for her husband. It's such a historical puzzle. What do you think it tells us about how people saw her?
It's truly enigmatic, isn't it? The mystery of why it's blank is just tantalizing. Some speculate her son, who succeeded her, just couldn't bring himself to write either good or bad about her, given her complex, controversial legacy. Others suggest maybe she left it blank herself, feeling her achievements were beyond words, or perhaps trusting future generations to judge her fairly. Its silence just speaks volumes about the enduring debate surrounding her.
Speaking of monumental figures and their journeys, we absolutely have to talk about Xuanzang, the intrepid Buddhist monk.
Ah, Xuanzang, yes.
Born Chen Yi, he became a monk, apparently driven by frustration over the incomplete, poor-quality Buddhist texts available in China at the time.
That's right.
He yearned to travel to India, the heartland of Buddhism, to seek out the original scriptures.
And this was absolutely no easy task. There was an imperial ban on crossing the western border at the time.
Right.
But he daringly slipped through the Jade Gate in 629 CE. His odyssey lasted 16 years.
16 years.
Took him along the Silk Road, through Central Asia, Afghanistan, where he saw the great Bamayan Buddhas before they were destroyed, and then extensively across India. He studied for years at Nalanda, the largest Buddhist university, visited all the major holy sites, and collected an astonishing 657 Buddhist texts.
And his return in 645 CE, it was met with national celebration, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The emperor himself met him.
Yes, he returned a celebrated figure. The emperor met him, even offered him the prestigious position of first minister,
Wow.
which Xuanzang, with characteristic humility, politely declined. He had a different mission.
Write the text?
Exactly. He dedicated the rest of his life in Chan to translating this vast collection he'd brought back. He established a major translation school, produced over 1,300 scrolls. His tireless work led to the first complete compilation of the Chinese Buddhist canon.
And the Great Wild Goose Pagoda that was built for his scriptures.
Yes, built in 6652 CE specifically to house his precious scriptures. It still stands today in Shan.
His travelogue, the records of the Western regions in the Great Tang era, it's not just a personal story, it's a vital historical source, isn't it? Giving incredible insights into Central Asia and India just before the Islamic invasions.
Absolutely invaluable. He wasn't just determined, he was a remarkably attentive and intelligent observer. His records are crucial for historians.
But Xuanzang's immense real-life achievements, they're perhaps overshadowed in the popular imagination by his fictionalized version, right? It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's most popularly known through the classic 16th century novel Journey to the West.
Exactly. This sprawling fantasy, based loosely on his pilgrimage, depicts him as the Tripitaka monk, protected by these powerful, often mischievous disciples like the gluttonous Pigsy, Zhu Baji, and, of course, the immensely popular Monkey King, Sun Wukong, whose acrobatic adventures in things like picking opera continue to captivate audiences worldwide.
What an incredible journey we've taken through these pivotal centuries. From the Sui Dynasty's rapid reunification, its groundbreaking, if incredibly costly projects like the Grand Canal, to the Tang Dynasty's flourishing culture, its open cosmopolitanism, and that revolutionary imperial examination system. These eras just fundamentally shaped China and really much of East Asia.
Definitely. We've seen how figures like Emperor Yang, Empress Wu Zexin, the intrepid monk Xuanzang, each left these indelible marks on history, on art, even on popular culture. Understanding this era really demonstrates how periods of both intense internal development and outward cultural exchange can forge empires of profound influence and lasting legacy, laying those deep roots for East Asian identity.
Absolutely. So a final thought for you, our listener. Considering the monumental achievements, but also the significant societal costs of these early imperial projects, how do you evaluate those trade-offs between the grand visions and the human impact? And what does this ancient history reveal about the enduring quest for knowledge and for power that continues to shape our world today?